I've been asked to share some snippets, some ideas of how Extension can build climate change into youth and family programs. And I'd like to start by saying every state organizes these things differently, right? Some states have youth and 4-H in one department and family and community science in another department. Some states lump them all together in one department. There's probably states that have 3 different departments, but I'm going to give you an orientation to things that have happened in the youth bubble, the family bubble, and the community development bubble. And however it's organized in your state, you can adapt and adopt. Because I think there's connections to climate change in each one of these bubbles. There's themes and topics and ways that we want to engage youth and their parents and their families and their communities. There's things that need to happen at the community level that can't happen at the family level, but that families might want to support. So that's why I'm tying all this stuff together. So the first one is something that I know a lot about. We developed at the University of Florida a secondary module called Southeastern Forest and Climate Change that is part of the Project Learning Tree suite of curriculum materials that are available. We targeted high school science teachers with this, and it was because it was part of a research project funded by USDA NIFA called Pine Map. It was all about southern forest, climate change, and how we maintain pine plantations in a changing climate and how we can do it in a way that mitigates climate change. So a lovely topic and important to share with teachers and kids and families and forest landowners. So this is part of the outreach and education activity that went along with that research. As long as we were developing activities about climate change and forest, we thought, well, let's make climate literate citizens out of these kids. Let's do a better job. So each one of these 14 activities is linked to systems thinking, because understanding the system will help people understand how a small activity can help solve a larger problem. We also decided that teaching more about climate change can be depressing, and we don't want to depress kids into inaction. We want to empower them to action. So building the efficacy and the skills for problem solving and the skills for systems thinking means nurturing hope. And so we built hope into all these activities too, and figured out how to measure it. And so it was a great, great project. This is one of the examples on your handout, so you can go to the website and download anything and adapt and adopt and make it your own. We're in Tucson, and we can't be here without saying something about the National Phenology Network. And there's probably local people who know way more about it than I do, and so talk to them. But this is low-hanging fruit. This is a way to get kids, schools, families, parents, anybody out in the world measuring and taking data on what's changing and the timing of leaves come out, the leafing and fruiting and flowering and nesting and hatching and whatever it is that's going on out there, they track it. And by tracking over time, we can look at climate change. And people can know for themselves if things are really changing. So this program is based here in Tucson. It's national, and there's gobs of resources that are available. There are programs that follow the extension model of Master Gardener, Master Naturalist, Master Wildlife Conservationist that help adults learn about climate change in their own lifestyle household. One of these is called Sustainable Floridians, but there's many. This particular one is a 7-week course that covers energy conservation, water conservation, all sorts of things related to local food and climate change. Lets people decide what makes sense for them, what they want to change in their own life, and then turns them into ambassadors so they can go into the community and talk to other people about these kinds of ideas, just like Master Gardener. There's a very similar project out of Washington. It used to be called Climate Masters, but oddly they've changed their title, and now it's Sustainable Community Stewards. So you can find all these on websites and figure out what you would like to do in your own communities. There's another way to engage adults in climate change, and that is discussion. The Kettering Foundation has created this National Issues Forum process, which is like a town hall meeting, to have people talk about current issues. They've teamed up with the North American Association for Environmental Education to create the Environmental Issues Forum. And the first model out of the starting block is on climate choices. The idea behind the National Issues Forum is that the issue gets framed in a way that has three different choices. Each choice has a values component that's different, so that whoever walks in that room can hear something that resonates with them. By the end of the discussion, people have talked about these three choices and some of the values that underpin them, and they go out feeling like they know more. They may also leave that meeting empowered to do something, or at least work with each other to find out more about how this relates to their own community. So it's kind of a nice model that's one stepping stone in a larger process that Extension might use for a program. They also have pre and post surveys, so you can find out to what degree the conversation changed people's ideas. What tends to happen is that people's opinion about the problem and the solution don't change. What does change is their ability to understand why other people have different ideas. And that's part of collaborative learning. That's part of deliberative discussion. That's part of how we create communities that can solve problems. So again, it's a stepping stone. So thinking about community development, there's all sorts of things communities need to do and want to think about that people can't solve on their own. And it seemed, when I went through the websites looking for examples of these things, it seemed like Sea Grant was ahead of a lot of other elements in Extension in helping communities, helping identify stakeholders and bringing those people to the table with planners and community leaders so that they can discuss the problems they face, the solutions that might be out there, prioritize ideas for funding mechanisms. Out of Virginia Sea Grant, there were some examples of communities working on flooding issues. And maybe it's because sea level rise and flooding in the East Coast is where the issue is, and so that's what people are concerned about, which is why Sea Grant is being active and engaged. And also because urban areas may tend to have people who have infrastructure they want to protect in a community way, so it kind of makes sense. So this particular example has a very nice PowerPoint and a nice process where they identified people and met together in small groups, then big groups, prioritized, voted, and were more likely to support the decisions that came out of their community. Ohio Sea Grant and Ohio State University also had a process. The marina industry on Lake Erie, little old shallow Lake Erie, is designed for 2 to 3 foot waves. Well, when Hurricane Sandy came through a couple years ago, they had 20-foot waves in Lake Erie, millions of dollars of damage to this industry. So they said, whoa, we need help. And Ohio Sea Grant got together with them to sort of identify vulnerabilities and ways that they could become more resilient. Workshops, booklets, all sorts of resources. It's what Extension does, right? Finds a problem and helps people solve it. And so that's another example of how Extension was working with a particular vulnerable industry. What I didn't find in my search is ways that Extension is identifying human health connections to climate. There are many, we heard of some yesterday, but I didn't see very many examples where Extension has used that as the headline. I think probably there's ways Extension is addressing these problems, but climate has sort of slipped under the radar. And maybe this is an opportunity for bringing it up to the fore. There's all sorts of resources out there to help us understand the human health, environment, climate connection. And one that I think we can all resonate with has to do with mental health and stress, and whether it's flooding or fire or drought or livelihood, the people in our communities are going to be stressed. So how can Extension help address that?